In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 116 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I am ready to get into what I believe is going to be a very fascinating episode of True Crime All the Time.
I believe you. And you got your specs on, man.
I do. I picked up my new glasses this week. I'm not sure I'm used to them yet. My first pair of glasses I've ever had.
Well, welcome to the Four Eyes Club.
That you've been in for many, many years.
Fifth grade, yes.
So we put out a poll on Patreon, and basically we've had a lot of new support, which is amazing.
It is amazing.
The numbers are staggering, the number of people, but because of that, we're probably about 5 weeks behind if we did things the way that we've always done them.
Yeah.
Which is basically say the same Patreon supporters on each show. So I put out a poll asking people, and overwhelmingly they said, just do half and half. So that's what we're going to do.
Which is great. Unsolved's growing anyway. I think finally people are jumping over to Unsolved.
Sure.
They've got caught up on
it is
TCAT.
growing big time.
Now they're jumping over there and hitting the backlog and getting caught up.
So we do say all the names on our kind of Patreon mini episode.
Right.
That way people will know your name is going to be on one or the other.
So if you don't hear it here.
Yeah, jump over to Unsolved. It'll be on there. So we had Steve Holt.
Hey, Steve.
Cassandra Rupert jumped out to her highest level.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Abby Redding.
Hey, Abby.
Suzanne Flores.
Thank you, Susan.
She jumped out to her highest level.
Suzanne does a good job.
So did Timothy Manier.
Manier. Yeah.
Jules.
Hey, Jules.
Ari Ansbro.
Ari. Hey, Ari.
Melissa Kecker.
Keka, like kicker, but a keka?
That's what I'm going with. I could go a couple different ways there. Susan Gable.
Hey, Susan.
Michael Cowling.
Hey, thanks, Michael.
Maria Gibbs.
Ooh, Gibbs.
Got the Gibbs.
That's good.
Allie Littman.
Hey, Allie.
Morgan Mills.
Morgan.
Nikki Allen.
Hey, Nikki.
Jared Myler.
Jarrett, what's up?
Marina Leith.
Leith.
Stephanie T.
Hey, Stephanie.
Sarah Winters.
Sarah, it's definitely your time of the year right now.
Oh, man, you ain't kidding. Andrea Hidalgo.
Ooh, Hidalgo.
Wendy Holdbrooks.
Hey, Wendy.
Jason Yeager.
Thank you, Jägermeister.
Logan Stull.
The Stall Master.
Sonia G.
Hey, Sonia.
Or Sonia, depending on how she
G
goes.
is.
I don't know.
Like kind of like Mikey G.
Could be Gibson for all we know.
Could be. You never know.
Gina Tro.
Treyo.
I don't know.
Treyu.
That's another one I could go a couple different ways. You're probably right.
Maybe she's just true.
Maybe. Catherine Mazer.
Hey, Catherine.
And then Allie G, who's been a Patreon supporter, jumped up to our highest level.
I appreciate that, Allie.
So if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Caitlin Tull.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Not only a longtime supporter, but a very big supporter of the show on Patreon.
Plus, she's got that famous dad.
Who's that?
Jethro.
I knew you were going to say that, but I wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that, Caitlin, very much. We appreciate all the new Patreon support. We had PayPal as well.
Oh, I like that too.
Grace Brunei.
Ooh, Brunei.
Kim Halamachek.
Halamachek.
Jennifer Mosier.
Hey, Jennifer.
Michelle Mesmer.
Hey, Mesmer.
And Ted Perry.
Our buddy Ted.
We're going to do this moving forward, split up the Patreon, hopefully make it go a little faster and get people's names out there quicker. Yeah, don't forget, if you're buying your CrimeCon badges, use our promo code CrimeAllTheTime19.
Yeah.
Then we got Unsolved. It's out
do
right
have
now as
Unsolved.
well.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. It's on the disappearance and death of Jennifer Harris.
Down in Texas.
Down in Texas.
Y'all.
For us, down. For most people in the United States, down.
Down. Yeah.
Some people over, but...
Yeah, shift left, shift right.
But it's a fascinating case. It has all the hallmarks of our, unsolved cases. Got some twists, turns, has suspects to persons of interest to talk about. All that stuff.
You're like it.
Make sure you check that out. And speaking of True Crime All the Time Unsolved, next week is a big milestone for us.
Yeah, 100 episodes over there.
It's the 100th episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. And we're going to go all out. And we're doing a very big case, a case that I've wanted to do from the beginning. I knew at some point we were going to tackle it. And
Right.
I think this is the time and it's the case of the West Memphis Three, the unsolved murders of 3 boys, the conviction of what's known as the West Memphis Three. And I know I'm going to get some emails. Technically, it's not an unsolved case.
Right.
Or I think it's okay to do an unsolved because I think most people that look at that case think, there's just no way those kids did that.
Yeah. So I think if you typically don't listen to Unsolved right now, you're going to want to jump over, and it's probably going to be a multi-episode.
Oh,
so
yeah,
you definitely
definitely.
want to jump over there and listen to it.
Definitely. It'll be at least 2, maybe even 3 episodes. It's a lot. There is a lot of information to tell it the way that we like to, with all the detail and
to
and
digest all that. Yes.
All right, Gibbs, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time?
Let's do it.
So we're talking about Darren Deon Vann. It's lesser known, like some of the ones that we like to do quite often, but Vann's a serial killer. And just because someone is a little less notorious, that's probably a better way to say it,
Sure.
doesn't mean he was any less horrific than a lot of more well-known killers. This guy was brutal. He confessed to murdering 7 women. But this is a guy that lived in a bunch of different places over the years. Some of those places we'll talk about. So I think this is another one of those case, Gibbs, where at the end of it, we're all going to be wondering, how many more victims did Vann really have?
Sure. Yeah, he could have had some in all those different locations.
He really could have. Either that he's not willing to talk about, or police have no information on, or the combination. I do think many people, probably most people, believe that he murdered more than what he has been willing to talk about, maybe many more, over what could be a 20-year period.
I think for sure that you could back that up.
We'll talk about it a little bit when we get into the case, but he's made some hints. And I think that's where a lot of people, they look at some things that he's hinted at and say, this guy did more than what he has told us so far. So Darren Vann was born in Indiana, March 21st, 1971. He's about our age, roughly.
In the ballpark.
But this is another case where there's not a ton of details on Darren Vann's background. I know he grew up in Indiana. He had at least one brother and one sister, and there were some records that indicated he lived in Ohio.
Really?
At some point, and actually graduated from high school in Lima,
Okay.
Ohio, which
Not too
is
far away.
What? Just a little bit more than an hour north of us.
About an hour 20.
Yeah, not too far. So Vann joined the Marine Corps in the early 90s, but he just wasn't cut out for it. And let's face it, Gibbs, the Marines don't put up with a whole lot of bullshit from what I understand. I've never been in the Marines. I did watch A Few Good Men the other night.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
You get a K-bar.
When you joined the Marines?
Well, you used to, sure.
That's that was their knife of choice, right?
Weapon of choice.
So I watched A Few Good Men. And I will say that movie holds up.
That's a great scene. Well, there's a couple great scenes in it.
Anything with Nicholson in it, the parts where he's giving like the long dialogues.
You can't handle the truth.
Those are great. The back and forth between him and Tom Cruise.
And it's got Demi Moore in it too.
Or Demi.
Or Demi.
However you want to say it.
Yeah.
But I will say, right, you watch movies like that, that's all I have to judge from. I've never been in the armed services, but we know some Marines. My understanding is that's not a place that you go into if you can't toe the line. The expectations are extremely high. Everything's extremely rigid.
Exactly.
He was in there for less than 2 years and received what was listed as an other than honorable discharge.
Okay.
Now, I've heard of a dishonorable discharge. This specifically said other than honorable. I don't know if that's a whole different category or if that is just a dishonorable discharge.
Sounds like
I just thought there was the two.
I think maybe that's what it is. I'm sure one of our fellow Marines.
Are you in the Marines?
No.
You know, there's a stiff penalty for impersonating a Marine.
Should I take off the fatigues?
Yeah, but we'll find out. You're right.
No, somebody will let us know.
Somebody will email us.
Yeah.
I couldn't find the exact reason for the discharge, except for one statement that was issued by a spokesperson, and it said, Mr. Vann's premature discharge and rank are indicative of the fact that the character of his service was incongruent with the Marine Corps' expectations and standards. There was a lot of big words in that sentence.
It was.
Incongruent.
I've got a headache just listening to it.
But you boil that down, and they're basically saying he couldn't hack it.
Couldn't perform.
He was doing things that they don't put up with.
Here's the minimum that we said you got to do to be with us, and you couldn't do that, so we're letting you go.
After he left the Marine Corps, he ended up in Cherry Point, North Carolina. We know that because he was arrested there in 1993. But by 1995, Darren Vann was in Texas, and he married a woman in 95 named Maria Matlock.
Ooh, Matlock.
Matlock.
That was a good series, if you like attorney stuff.
But she was almost 30 years his senior.
Well, now there you go.
So 95, he would have been, 24 years old?
Yeah.
Give or take.
Right.
Which puts her in the 53, 54 range.
It's like Sugar Mama.
They were together for about 10 years. They separated in 2005, but actually married quite a bit longer. The divorce was not finalized until 2011. When everything comes out, right, about Darren Vann, the media talked to his ex-wife, and she said, I don't get it. This is not the guy that I knew. He never mistreated me. She didn't see anything in him during what was a pretty long time, 10 years,
right,
that would have led her to believe, Gibbs, that he was capable of the crimes that we're going to talk about.
And that's just so bizarre, to know somebody as well as you think you do,
To find out that
they had this other side of them that was so deviant.
She was really shocked after hearing what he was accused of. She said, this guy didn't drink. He was always friendly. He was a good protector. He was a good provider.
Yeah.
Always had a job. If for some reason he lost his job, he would get another one pretty quickly. She really had nothing but pretty good, nice things to say about him.
Makes you wonder.
It does. But I will say that her son tells a much different story about Darren Vann. He said Vann was strange. First of all, he didn't understand the age difference. 30 years.
Yeah.
When one is 24, the other's, let's say, is 54, you've got to figure that the son was probably around that age or maybe even older than his mother's husband.
Yeah, that's true.
He could never understand why this guy was going after his mom. He's been quoted as saying, the guy is a nutcase and I'd watch him. Well, these quotes are made after his crimes come to light. So it's not
easier said.
They're not a big stretch to say, hey, you might want to watch this guy. Yeah, he killed 7 women. But he said, I'd never allow him near my kids or in my home because he just freaked me out. So he's actually talking about a time before he knew really what Darren Vann had done. The other thing that he added was that Vann talked to himself a lot, which he found very odd. But it wasn't just him. A lot of people found this strange, that Darren Vann talked to himself what was described as most of the time.
Really?
He walked around creepy. You know, he was always in deep thought. Always, like he had something on his mind, something else on his mind other than where he was. You know what I mean? When you talk, you say hello, he's like, hello, and looks down to the ground. Or he starts, or if you turn around, he's like talking to himself slowly. I'm like, this dude, this really creepy. He's almost talking to himself.
I think he thought he was creepy.
I think so too.
He said it a couple times.
Creepy.
So Vann was involved in an incident in Gary, Indiana in 2004 that brought him face to face with police. In April of that year, Darren went to the residence of a man who was living with his ex-girlfriend, with Darren's ex-girlfriend. And apparently this guy was in a wheelchair. Vann went there to collect some money. And it wasn't a small sum. It was said to have been $7,000.
Good chunk of change.
That he believed his ex-girlfriend owed him. Now, I do want to make note of the year, right? So 2004 is when this happened. I just got done saying he was married in 95 and they separated in 2005.
Right.
So in 2004, he's trying to collect money from his ex-girlfriend. So that might tell you a little bit about how the marriage was going.
Right.
But even still, his ex-wife didn't badmouth him.
No.
I still find that very odd.
No, she did not.
So he's at this house. So Vann's walking up to this guy's house, the boyfriend, and he's carrying a red gasoline can when the two encounter each other. And the boyfriend apparently said to Vann, why do you want to burn my family, innocent people, over a woman? Because I think he kind of has a clue here what he's doing with this can of gasoline, and it's not going to be good. Vann allegedly replied back, give me the $7,000 and I'll leave and you can have her. He also told the boyfriend that he had some dynamite and he'd blow them all up if he didn't get his $7,000.
He'll ignite it and blow them up.
He's either going to set somebody on fire or he's going to light some dynamite. Either way, it's not going to be a good situation. And it started to escalate very quickly. Vann managed to get his ex-girlfriend out of the house. He grabbed her, pulled her out. By this point, the police are on their way. But what he did next, Gibbs, was it's almost unbelievable. He took the gasoline, poured it on himself, poured it on his ex-girlfriend.
Right.
And he's walking around holding her with a lighter, threatening to light both of them on fire. Now, I got to take a step back. This was a listener submitted topic, right? Darren Vann. When I got the email, I looked into him a little bit and I decided that, we need to do him because it was a very interesting story. Well, it just so happens that the listener that submitted the story was also a Gary, Indiana police officer.
Which is cool.
Yeah, very cool. And he agreed to do a quick interview with me because he was called to the scene of this 2004 incident and had an encounter with Darren Vann.
At the time this happened, I was a Gary police officer. I was a young Gary police officer. I had only been on the road by myself, as in not riding with another officer, a training officer, for 6 to 8 months at the time. So I'm still learning the job. I know 6 to 8 months in another job, that might be enough to get comfortable and even consider yourself, a veteran at what you do. But being a police officer isn't like that, especially in a place like Gary. So I'm working afternoon shift at the time. I was on straight afternoon, so I know it was afternoon shift. And call comes out over dispatch about a domestic disturbance. And at first, it's just a domestic disturbance, which is a fairly common call. The units who were sent there respond. And a couple minutes later, we get another call about the same address. And this has escalated from just a male and female arguing to this male subject is now trying to force entry into the home where his ex-girlfriend is. The male subject is later identified as Darren Vann. So now that this has escalated from just a verbal altercation, or what was perceived by us through dispatch as a verbal altercation, to an actual subject trying to force entry into the home, of course, most units start answering up. We're en route, whoever's available, being one of them. Gary's a large city. It takes you a couple minutes to get from point A to point B, even if you're running with your lights and sirens. So as I'm responding to the call, it now comes out the subject has forced entry into the home. Darren Vann has forced entry into the home, now is holding his girlfriend hostage, pulled her out of the home, and he's got a gas can with him. And so units start getting on scene with him, and he's walking her on the sidewalk down through the streets of Gary. And actually, this is literally only a couple of blocks away from the PD, as a matter of fact, Gary Police Department. As he's walking her, he starts pouring gasoline from the gas can all over himself and her, and he's got a lighter in his hand, and he's threatening to light her on fire. And at some point, just after he pulls her out of the house a couple minutes, I arrive on scene, and he's actually walking her across a part of US Route 20, which in Gary is the main east-west thoroughfare through the north part of the city. I mean, it's a major 3-lane, one-direction road, one-way road, 3 lanes. So we're having to block traffic because he's walking her through the city backwards through the streets, one arm wrapped around her body, and one hand holding a lighter. And eventually, there's so many cops that have arrived now. There's probably at least 20 of us that have arrived. He realizes that there's nowhere he could go. So what he does is he walks himself and backs himself up between the alleyway of 2 houses. And when I say alleyway, it's really not like an alleyway to drive a car. It's, what some cities you would call a gangway, just a piece of sidewalk between 2 brick walls of homes that's big enough for, a person to walk through. There's actually a picture of him holding her like this you could see a brick wall behind him. That's one of the houses. So at that point, we have, at the time, a captain who's on the SWAT team. He shows up, and he gives me a shotgun filled with beanbags, and he tells me to go take up a position at the one end of the alley, the gangway, and if I get a shot, to try to take a shot. And in the meantime, another officer shows up, and he actually is able to talk Darren Vann down and release the female subject and bring this whole ordeal to a close. But I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy things as a police officer, and in Gary too. This was one of those calls that really just, it always stuck with you. And at the time, this was before Darren Vann had started his killing spree, at least, we all think. It was an interesting call. It was like, holy cow, I can't believe that just happened, but it wasn't, it was almost just an every other day thing. After it was done, it was early in our shift. After it was done, we all talked about it. The detectives came and they took Darren to the police department, and they booked him on his felony charges. His girlfriend at the time was given medical treatment, and the rest of us, we all just went and there were other calls to answer. Gary's a big city, so, it was on to the next call after that, not giving any thought to the fact of, years later, I would turn on the news, and here's this same man that, we were involved in this call with, who is now under investigation for being a serial killer. It was pretty crazy.
So I thought that was cool, Gibbs. You and I don't do a lot of interviews on true crime all the time, or unsolved, really, for that matter.
Right.
But, since he suggested the episode and had this personal experience, I thought it'd be really cool for him to talk about it.
He did a good job.
And so I want to thank him and thank his mom too, because his mom is the one that turned him on to the podcast.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. All right, Gibbs, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor, Audible. Now, listen, we know that reading can make you a better person. It can make you smarter, but we have a podcast audience, and we've heard people like to multitask. They like to do things while they're listening to the podcast. That makes Audible perfect for this group. With Audible, you get access to an unbeatable selection of audiobooks, including bestsellers, motivation, true crime, thrillers, and so much more. They have the largest selection of audiobooks on the planet. right now I'm listening to Past Tense. I'm a huge Jack Reacher fan. Past Tense is the newest book out, just came out a few months ago from Lee Child, a continuation in the Jack Reacher series. But with Audible, you can listen on any device, anytime, anywhere, just like you do with the podcast. You'll also enjoy easy audiobook exchanges, rollover credits, and an audiobook library you keep forever, even if you cancel. So check it out. Go to audible.com/true crime and get started with a 30-day trial. Or you can text true crime to 500-500. So that's audible.com/true crime or text true crime to 500-500. audible.com/true crime. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. So Vann made a deal with prosecutors and he pleaded guilty to misdemeanor residential entry. So they dropped a charge of intimidation, which would have been a felony, and he was sentenced to a year in jail and a year of probation. Misdemeanor residential entry.
Fancy.
Where's the I poured gasoline on somebody and threatened to light them on fire part? But
Yeah.
I get it. They have to do that stuff. But with Darren Vann, it's not going to take him long to violate his probation after he got out, after he had done his time. In 2005, he was sentenced to another 90 days in jail for a probation violation. Then you get to 2007. And in 2007, Vann sexually assaulted a 25-year-old woman in Austin, Texas. So apparently what happened was this woman went out to a home where Vann was living on a service call for whatever company that she worked at.
Okay.
When she got there, Darren Vann brutally attacked this woman, beat her severely, and forced her to perform oral sex on him. The woman got away from Darren and she went to police. But there's no doubt about what happened to her. She had red marks all over her neck where he had attempted to strangle her. She told police that at one point during the incident, Vann said to her, "I could easily kill you."
And he meant it.
Oh, he meant it.
Yeah.
He meant it for sure. So it took a while, but he finally got convicted of this sexual assault in 2009, was sentenced to 5 years in prison. So this guy's no stranger to jail, to the law, to breaking the law,
Right.
to prison. But he did his time. He was released in 2013. But the other thing that happened was in Texas, he was classified as a sex offender and forced to register, which he should have been.
Sure.
He committed a very violent sexual crime.
Needed to be on it for sure.
But the strange thing to me was in their evaluation, the state of Texas deemed Darren Vann as what they called a low risk for violence. And this is a part I didn't understand. I mean, it really kind of seemed ridiculous to me, given what he did to this 25-year-old woman. Now, he might have been a model prisoner. I don't know.
I don't think it even matters, though.
I don't think
If
it
you know
does
the
either.
history. It's
I don't see how you can call him a low risk for future violence after what he did to this woman. Now, he served his time. He paid his price, if you want to call it that,
Sure.
for doing what he did. But after getting out, I think Vann thought, you know what? Texas is not the place for me. Things have not gone well for me in Texas. I'm going to move back to Indiana. He had grown up there. He had some family there. So he did. He moved back to Indiana, and he moved in with his sister in Gary. But one thing I do want to talk about, it appears to me that the system worked as it should have, right? Aside from this weird, strange classification that I talked about of him being a low risk for violence, he notified the Texas authorities that he was moving to Indiana, and they in turn reached out to their counterparts in that state to let them know. And he actually did register as a sex offender in the state of Indiana. And there's evidence that the police made their checks to the different addresses that he listed, and they confirmed that he lived there. So they were checking up on him. But even so, over a period of about 15 months, Darren Vann murdered 7 women after moving to Indiana. But through it all, he kept complying with the sex offender registration requirements. In fact, it was noted that he checked in with authorities just a month before he was captured, and all of these shocking crimes that he committed would come to light. So I wanted to point that out because I think in other episodes, Gibbs, we have talked about where people didn't comply, or they complied, but the state didn't do the checks that they were supposed to.
Yeah, we talked about that.
I don't think that happened here. But even still, it can't stop everything, right? There's no way
It's impossible.
to check on someone once a month or whatever the frequency is. There's no way that you can know exactly what they're doing at all times. And it was on October 17th, 2014, police were called to a grisly scene at a Motel 6 in Hammond, Indiana. They found 19-year-old Africa Hardy naked in the bathtub with the shower still running. They saw that she had red marks on her neck, which indicated that she had been strangled. One of her fingernails was broken. They found a shirt button as well as a condom wrapper on the floor of the motel room. And they knew there'd been a struggle in that room. You could tell just from the way that the beds were. I guess they were just a mess, pulled away from the headboards. You know, everything was...
Definitely some scuffling going on.
Yeah, they had a fight in that room. So it came out that Africa Hardy was dabbling in escort work.
Escort services.
Escort service.
Yeah.
Along with another woman. They were advertising on a website called Backpages.com. And this was actually Chicago Backpages. I think this was... I don't know if this is still around, but I think this is one of those like Craigslist where they have a different one for every city.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
So it was the way that the research made it sound was like it specifically was Chicago Backpages.
Okay.
But I don't think it was limited to Chicago.
And not limited to escorts.
Oh, no, I don't think it was just
It was
for...
just like classified ads, basically.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what Backpages.com was. I don't
you-
think it was just escorts.
What did you use?
Wasn't Backpages.
Yeah.
But this is what they were doing. They were essentially running, these two women, running a little escort service by advertising on this Backpages.com. So this other woman that was working with Hardy in the business, she got worried. Because, you know, Gibbs, they probably had a system where one was supposed to notify the other after, let's say, they met a client. Well, Africa didn't reach out, and her friend tried to get a hold of her multiple times. No response. Texts, phone calls. And then at one point, the woman received some strange text messages that said they were from Africa, but she knew they weren't. Didn't sound like her. You know, it wasn't the way that she would have talked. So she got really worried, and she called up a friend, and they went to the Motel 6, And they were actually the ones that first discovered Africa's body. They called in the police. But it really didn't take the authorities long to zero in on Darren Vann. For one thing, this woman had his cell phone number. He had used his cell phone to call the number that they used to advertise. Wasn't that hard for her to go back and figure out who called.
No, pretty simple process of elimination.
Yep. So she was able to give that to police. Now, what I did find interesting was that she remembered this guy calling. I think she had taken the call, and she said that the man used the name Big Boy Appetite.
Big Boy Appetite.
I don't know if it was on a call or on the web. I'm not sure how, but it came out that he was referring to himself as Big Boy Appetite.
Well, kind of similar to yours.
I do have a big boy appetite. I don't think the way that Darren Vann had a big boy appetite.
No, I think it's much different.
I do when it comes to pizza, things like that.
Yeah.
You know? So police trace the number to Vann. It's a very simple process, really, right? Once they have that information, they also obtain the security camera footage from the motel.
Always helpful.
Always helpful. And it showed Darren Vann. It showed his car. So the very next day, so this happened on a Friday night. The very next day on Saturday, they arrest Darren Vann in Gary, Indiana. And it didn't take long during the police interrogation for Darren Vann to admit to the murder of Africa Hardy. They had a lot of evidence against him. The cell phone number, the surveillance video footage. I talked about the button that they found in the motel. Well, it just so happened that he was wearing the same shirt the next day when he was arrested, and it was missing that button.
Take same button.
Yeah.
Yep.
Probably should change your shirt, at least daily.
Just like you do your boxers.
And especially after you commit a heinous crime.
Yeah, I mean, I would have burnt the shirt.
Well, don't tell everybody how you do your stuff.
No, I'm not. I mean, they listen long enough. They know some of my inside.
Some of your strategies.
Yes.
So Vann reportedly told police officers that he, quote, messed up, and added that he was shocked at how quickly they were able to locate him. He messed up, Gibbs.
Well, everybody makes mistakes, but
yeah, killing a 19-year-old woman
is
just a tad bit more than messing up.
It's huge, man. It's life-changing for everybody.
Well, it's going to be, and we'll talk about Africa's mom a little bit, but it struck me that that's the word he used in confessing to the murder. Hey, man, I messed up.
I messed up, man. Just had a bad day.
I mean, that's what you say when you transpose a number on a report at work.
Why are we talking about me again?
Well,
we always go back to me.
But right, you say something like that. Oh, that's my bad. I messed that up.
Yeah.
You don't say that in talking about the murder of someone.
Gee, sorry.
But again, did he view it as that much different? I don't know. Maybe he didn't. Maybe that's why he used those words.
Well, and I think we've covered enough of these terrible, terrible killers that some of them don't. They just don't have that feeling. They don't have that remorse. They don't. It's like
that they've really done something wrong.
Sorry, It's like when you misplace something. Sorry, it's how they're with this. Sorry.
So Vann told police that he responded to an ad on Chicago Backpages to meet someone named Octavia for sex. He said they began having sex at the motel room, but that the woman, who was Africa Hardy, she started to fight him when the sex got a little rough, or probably a lot rough. I shouldn't say a little rough. And those were his own words. I think he initiated that. She didn't like it. She started to fight him, and he strangled her, first with his hands, and then with a brown extension cord that he brought with him. So let's talk about that. Heat of the moment, you do something horribly wrong, strangle someone with your hands.
Yeah.
You don't, in the heat of the moment, bring an extension cord with you beforehand
pull it out of your back pocket. Let me get my
extension cord.
Traveling extension cord.
I mean, you don't bring an extension cord unless you're planning on doing something bad. I mean, if you're a killer, right? If you're a handyman, okay, you're going to plug your drill in. But this is not what the situation is with Darren Vann. He's going to meet a woman for sex at a motel room. What's he need the extension cord for?
Kind of games is...
Don't answer that. But he doesn't, right? The point is, he brought it for one thing and one thing only. He knew that he was going to strangle someone.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just the extension cord. He also brought some things along to help him clean up.
Oh, cleaning kit, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So no doubt this was thought about beforehand. He was on a mission. It didn't just get out of hand. After Africa Hardy was dead, Vann put her body in the bathtub, turned on the water, and he left. But what's amazing about this interrogation was that that's not all that he admitted to. He told police he had murdered 6 other women since moving back to the Gary, Indiana area.
Wow.
And I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. He didn't stop there. He also hinted at other possible murders dating back to the 1994-1995 timeframe. And that's why people think, could this have been 20 years worth of murders, whatever that number may be?
Right. 1 a year, 10 a year, who knows?
He admitted to murdering 7 women in 15 months.
Yeah.
That's a victim once every 2 months.
Yep.
I mean, you extrapolate that out over
20 years.
20 years, the number could be pretty high. But the thing is, he never admits to it. He doesn't come out and give names. He hints at it. But I want to talk about Gibbs, how quickly everything moved from the police discovering Africa Hardy's body on a Friday night, really. I think it was like 9:30.
Right.
The very next day, they arrest Darren Vann and he confesses. He starts telling them about these other women that he murdered. He basically leads them to another body that very night. Saturday night, they find the body of 35-year-old Anith Jones. And then the next day on Sunday, he leads authorities to the bodies of the other 5 women. So in a weekend, all of this happens from Friday night to Sunday. The speed of it is astounding.
Yeah, it's so rapid.
So we've mentioned Gary, Indiana a couple times. I want to talk about Gary just a little bit.
Been through there many times.
Yeah, I have too. And I think being as close as we are, we've heard the stories about Gary. Probably a lot of people around the country have. During the late 90s, it was routinely called the murder capital of the U.S. Now, not in sheer numbers, but per capita. The murder rate there was off the charts. So then you get to 2014, the year that Vann is caught. Gary, Indiana had a population of about 80,000 people, which was down from, let's say, 180.
It's a big drop.
Yeah.
People didn't want to hang out there.
Well, it was a kind of a thriving steel city at one point, and then it declined.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely fed the auto industry.
It's not the same as where we live, but when General Motors pulled out of Dayton, Ohio,
it hurt.
It made a huge difference in people's lives. But that's not the part that really blew me away. The part that blew me away was that in 2014, it was reported that Gary, Indiana had as many as 10,000 vacant, abandoned homes. And they said the poverty rate in the city was about 40%.
Well, those are strong numbers.
Those numbers are astronomical. You've got a population of 80,000 people and you have 10,000 abandoned homes. And that also means that 30+ thousand people are living below the poverty line.
That's scary, man. I mean, we've seen, I know I have, and I believe you have too, with our jobs. Previous job, for me, is just streets of rows of abandoned homes. I mean, literally, you could drive down a stretch of neighborhood and
Just see one after the other.
Yeah. And every now and then you'd find just one that somebody was still living with, but all the other ones are empty.
So I mentioned they lost about 100,000 people, right, over the years. So that's part of it. That's how you get so many abandoned homes. But the other thing was losing that many people, that's losing a lot of taxes.
No, it's killing the city budget.
So they didn't have the money to demolish all of these abandoned houses. They even developed a program where they were offering them up for sale for like $1.
They just wanted some warm bodies in there that were going to pay the taxes on the property.
Fix it up,
Yep.
do whatever. You can get any of these houses you want. You can buy this whole street if you want for about $12. Every house on the street. They were in a bad way. But the reason I bring it up is because as Darren Vann is telling authorities where to find all these bodies, that's what he used. He used this massive amount of abandoned houses to hide his victims. Police held a press conference, and I want to play just a little bit of that where you can hear the police chief talking about the victims.
Beginning with locations where they were found, the 6 scary victims. 413 East 43rd Avenue, victim identified as 35-year-old Maryville resident Aneeth Jones. The second one, 1800 East 19th Avenue, victim identified as 28-year-old Gary resident Taria Beatty. Third one, 2200 Massachusetts, victim unidentified African-American female. The fourth one, 4300 Connecticut, victim identified as 36-year-old Gary resident Christine Williams. And 2 victims found together, 400 East 43rd Avenue, 2 unidentified African-American females. All the victims were found in Gary, except the one obviously at Motel 6 in the city of Him.
So this was pretty early on after he had admitted to the murders. It was days after. They hadn't even identified all of the victims yet. The one thing I didn't like about that clip was the chief keeps saying the next one. He keeps saying one, this one, that one, and referring to the victims. I thought it was a little impersonal, but
Yeah.
that's maybe me nitpicking. So they haven't identified all of the victims. It was said that some of the bodies were significantly decomposed, which made, identification pretty tough, but they eventually would identify all 7 women. Police were using cadaver dogs around the neighborhoods where the bodies were found. They were looking for more victims. I think their thought process was, okay, he's told us about 7 victims. What's he holding back? What's he not telling us about? But they didn't find any. So I think at least in the areas that they searched, he was pretty truthful. Obviously, he was truthful about 7,
Right?
Because they found 7 victims. So Darren Vann was charged with the death of 19-year-old Africa Hardy and 35-year-old Aneeth Jones. Hardy was from Chicago. Jones was from Maryville, Indiana. The other women that he admitted killing were 27-year-old Tanya Gatlin from Highland, Indiana. And then the rest were all from Gary. 28-year-old Tierra Beatty, 41-year-old Tracy Martin, 36-year-old Christine Williams, and 52-year-old Sonia Billingsley. But he wouldn't be charged with these murders right away. Just the 2. It would be years later that they would charge him with the rest. So we talked about how Vann called this backpages.com number
Right.
to set up a date with Africa Hardy. She was only 19 years old,
Young one.
barely out of high school. She had lived in Colorado for a number of years with her mother. She really just only recently had moved back to Chicago before this happened. Her mother had no idea that she was involved in an escort business
Right.
in Chicago.
Probably most mothers don't.
No, and she was shocked, obviously. Not only that her daughter was dead, but that police and the media were saying these types of things about her. But she said something that you and I often talk about. As all this stuff came out in the media about her daughter, she said, you know what? It doesn't matter. She was shocked about finding out that she was doing this stuff, and she said she didn't raise her daughter like that, but that was her baby. And didn't matter what she was doing. She didn't deserve to die the way she did, regardless of being an escort or whether it was against the law or any of that.
Who cares what you're doing? It doesn't give anybody a right to kill you.
Her mother had expected Africa home for Thanksgiving the following month. And it was heartbreaking. She said, she was my best friend. When I didn't have anything, she was all I had. I can't tell her I love her anymore. I can't give her hugs. I can't give her kisses.
Mom and daughter bond, man.
It can be very, very strong.
Yeah. Mom and daughter at one moment could be at each other's throats, and you could be shaking your head like, this is bad. And then go get a glass of water and come back and they're laughing about something.
So I'll tell you what happens in my house, because I have two daughters. They go at it, right? One of my daughters will be going at it with my wife, and they're just arguing with each other.
Right.
But the minute I step in, if I even try to take a side, immediately they gang up on me.
Oh yeah.
And it's like they're instantly connected in their hatred for me because I'm trying to step in and stop this.
Been there, done that. I walk away like, I used to be like, damn, but now I walk away like, yeah, you guys both can thank me. I took the heat off. You guys are all good because of me,
But it goes to your point. It can change, in an instant.
Oh.
It can be an all-out verbal war to the next thing is you can't separate them. Once the temps start rising, I realized I was back in the same worn out rotation. Same tank, same shorts, same everything. So I gave my daily uniform an upgrade with Quince. Their pieces are easy, elevated, and somehow make me feel more put together without even trying. Like they're 100% European linen shorts and dresses from $30. Luxe swimwear, Italian leather platform sandals, and so much more. The best part, everything with Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than what you'd find at similar brands. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middleman, Quince gives you luxury without the markup. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I'm getting ready to stock up on shorts for summer from Quince, and I know they're going to be amazing because everything I've ordered has been of the highest quality, and the prices are amazing. Treat your closet to a little summer glow up with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCAT for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCATT to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCAT. My wife and I do a lot of shopping online, and we always use Rakuten. Rakuten is the smartest way to save money when you shop because you earn cash back at over 3,500 stores. We're talking fashion, beauty, electronics, home essentials, travel, dining, concert tickets, and more. Your favorite stores like Macy's, Nike, Sephora, Dyson, and Lowe's. And that's just to name a few. Pay Rakuten to send them shoppers. And Rakuten then passes on a part of that payment to its members as cashback. Cashback is deposited directly into your PayPal account, or Rakuten can send you a check. You can even maximize your savings by stacking cash back on top of other deals, like store sales and coupons. You're already shopping at your favorite stores. Why not save while you're doing it? It really is a no-brainer. Membership is free, and it's easy to sign up. Get the Rakuten app now and join the 17 million members who are already saving. Cashback rates change daily. See Rakuten.com for details. That's RAKUTEN. Your cash back really adds up. Vann told police that a friend of his offered him $300 in cash and some 8 balls of crack to get rid of Anith Jones. What amounts to maybe under $500 worth of money and drugs. He killed a woman. Now, he was a killer, so he probably wanted to kill her anyway. So what Vann told the police was that the friend had some kind of court date coming up, and apparently Anith Jones was set to play some type of role. Either she was going to testify against him, something that the friend didn't want to happen. She was last seen on October 8th and reported missing 2 days later.
Well, they would find her car just about a half mile up from where Vann lived, abandoned.
Yeah, they found abandoned. But of course, at that point, they didn't know who he was. I mean, well, they didn't know he was a serial killer. They weren't looking for him. Vann told police to go to a specific abandoned house and look under some tires and a teddy bear. And that's where they found the body of Anith Jones. He admitted meeting her at a house for sex. He strangled her with the same brown extension cord that he took and used on Africa Hardy. Then he put the body of Anith Jones in a garbage can and transported her to the abandoned house. So he didn't kill her there, but that's where he ultimately left her body, underneath tires and a teddy bear. Christine Williams was a mother of 4, and she hadn't been seen or heard from since February of 2014. But like we hear in a lot of cases, Gibbs, she was never reported missing. Her family later came out and said that she often disappeared. So they had been through this many times before, and they thought it was like any of those other times. She would come back whenever she was ready.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Unsolved we did last week, where they just thought the young girl ran away again.
Yeah, very similar. But the problem was she didn't come back because she met Darren Vann.
Bad person.
Yep. Police found her body under some plastic sheeting in an abandoned house, right where Vann said they would find her. He said he beat Christine to death because she owed him money for drugs. Then you talk about Tierra Beatty. She was a 28-year-old mother of a 2-year-old son. And in an interview, her mother said that the last time she talked with her, she was crying. And she said she was scared, but she didn't say why.
And with this one, you had the same problem, right? The family was used to her disappearing now and then for extended periods of time and then reappearing. So they just thought this was another one of those occasions.
The difference with Beatty was that her mother said in interviews that she had a mind like a 12-year-old. She was very trusting of people, and that made her vulnerable.
And people can pick up on that, and they can play that to their advantage. And I'm sure maybe that's what he did.
I'm sure he did, because he told authorities that he lured Tierra Beatty to the abandoned house where police later found her body with the promise of crack in exchange for sex. He strangled her with a rope. But again, she had a mind like a 12-year-old. She had some mental deficiencies. There's no doubt about it. In reading some of the things that her mother has said about her, they loved her. She was very sweet, but she was too trusting. She never thought that anyone would ever do anything wrong to her as long as she didn't do anything bad to them.
Right.
That's the way she trusted people, as in, as long as I don't hurt anybody or say anything mean to anyone, they won't hurt me. But we know that's not the world we live in.
It doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Darren Vann strangled both Sonia Billingsley and Tanya Gatlin with some type of rope. They were the victims that were found in the same abandoned house. I think you heard it in the clip. It was said that you could see this house from the house where Anith Jones's body was found. So very, very close. Billingsley was reported missing by her family right away. She was a little older than the other women. She was 52. She had a 30-year-old daughter who was on her own. Sonia lived with her mother in order to take care of her. She didn't drive. And it was on a Friday morning in February of 2014, very early in the morning. It was, I think, like 7 o'clock in the morning. She got on the bus and went to the grocery store to get some groceries. She got back home around 8:30, and it was said that she made a phone call And then all of a sudden, she left the house in a hurry. And her daughter told papers that she still had curlers in her hair. So they knew that she didn't plan on going somewhere for very long. She wasn't planning on being gone for a long time. She hadn't even taken the curlers out of her hair.
She just jotted off to take care of something really fast. Yeah.
But that was the last time they ever saw her alive. And with most of these women, if not all of them, Gibbs, the families didn't find out what happened to them until the Darren Vann story broke.
Can you imagine?
Can't. And I never even saw, I don't know if they were all contacted by the authorities, because I have to imagine that the media broke the story very quickly. It wouldn't be out of the question for some of these families to maybe have heard it before the police could even call them. I don't know. I'm speculating. Either way, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But I think to hear about your daughter, your mother, your sister, your aunt's death on the news like that, for that to be the first way that you're notified, if it ever happened that way, that would be horrible.
It would be horrible.
Tanya Gatlin was a mother with a 2-year-old son, just like Tara Beatty. Her mother last saw her in January of 2014. Tanya struggled with addiction for a long time, about 10 years. But her family said she was a fun-loving, very sweet person. They said when she wasn't doing drugs, which I think was mostly crack, she was great. They loved her. But when she got on the crack,
messes people up, man.
She would disappear. And because of her addiction, she couldn't take care of her 2-year-old son. The state actually took him away, gave him to her mother. But again, because of this, much like some of the other women, she would leave for extended periods of time. Her mother said that sometimes she only showed up for holidays.
Wow.
Or, special events. So at first her family wasn't concerned. They didn't file a police report. They had gone through this a lot over 10 years is my assumption. But then she didn't show up for her son's birthday. And they knew that wasn't right.
That's when they knew they had a bigger problem.
Yep. That's when they began to worry. Vann told police that he lured Tracy Martin to the house where her body was later found, much in the same way as Tara Beatty. I think it was based on the idea of sex for money. He beat her, he strangled her. Unfortunately, I couldn't find much information on Tracy at all. She was released from prison on June 26th and reported missing 5 days later. She never reported to her parole officer as she was supposed to, and that's obviously because she met Darren Vann and he killed her. So Vann goes to his very first court appearance, and for some reason, he refused to talk to the judge at all. Wouldn't answer any of her questions and got held in contempt of court.
It was bizarre, Carol. The magistrate came in. The Lake County prosecutor himself was in the courtroom. Then the defendant, Darren Vann, came in and said, "Will you tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?" And he didn't respond. And the magistrate asked him again, and he didn't respond. And she asked a third time, and he didn't respond. Then she warned him that if he does not respond and speak in this initial hearing, that he will remain in jail forever. Those are the words that he used. She said, "We'll try this again in a week." He'll come back in a week here, do the same thing again. What is a big legal question that we have, and we're reaching out to our legal analyst to find out, is he could face the death penalty here in the state of Indiana if he is convicted of these murders. So is this a way that he could actually legally, never be put on death row? If he doesn't say anything, Carol, in this initial hearing, he will stay in jail forever. So it was absolutely bizarre.
So at first I wasn't going to play that much of the clip, but then I really started to think about what the reporter was saying.
Right.
And I thought, now I'm going to leave, a little bit more in so that you and I can talk about it. This is his very first court appearance. He's not going to go to trial for a number of years, but Indiana has the death penalty. The judge says, you know what? Until you answer me, we can't move forward. You're just going to stay in jail on this contempt of court charge. So I thought the question was very interesting. I never found the answer, unfortunately, but I'm sure somebody out there probably knows. What would happen? Could you literally stay in jail for the rest of your life on a contempt of court charge?
Wow.
And never make it to
Your trial?
a trial where you could technically be given the death penalty? I just thought it was fascinating. I guess it's not that big a deal when you're going to sit in jail regardless, whether it's for contempt of court or because you're awaiting a murder trial.
Right.
It's no big deal to him. What does he care?
No.
It was more about is that really a legal strategy? Would it ever work? My assumption is no. Eventually the judge is going to have to say, you know what? We're just going to have to move forward. You won't talk. You won't talk. You're going to have to go before a jury of your peers at some point and be sent to big boy prison.
Right. Exactly.
You can't stay in jail
I wouldn't think
for the rest of your life.
Nope. Justice system. I mean, you have to go through the proper.
Right.
Yeah.
I just thought it was very interesting. But he does come back in a week, and this time very different. He answered the judge's questions, was said to have been very polite. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, in talking to the judge, and he entered a plea of not guilty. Now, he might have been polite in that second appearance, but by all indications, Darren Vann was not a great inmate while sitting in the Lake County jail awaiting his trial. So one day, as officers were passing out the food trays, they have that little slot in the door.
Yes.
Slot comes down, the
Know it.
tray goes in, the slot gets closed. Well, when the officer opened the slot to Darren Vann's cell to put his tray of food in, Darren grabbed the door, the slot door,
The trap door, yeah.
and he wouldn't let it go. So he got the food, but he's holding on to this door, and the guard wants to close it, and he can't.
Right.
So another guard comes over. They're wrestling with Vann in this door, trying to get it shut. Meanwhile, Darren Vann's got a big old container of his own piss and shit,
Oh, yeah.
and he throws it through the door on these guys.
Little piss shit cocktail.
That's not right, man.
No, it's not
These
right,
guys are
but
just trying to do their job.
It happens all the time.
I'm sure it
unfortunately,
does.
in that arena.
A little Silence of the Lambs action. That was even worse, but
Yes.
well, yeah, that was even worse. But this couldn't have been good.
Nobody wants body
Any body
fluids thrown on them.
They're like,
Well, there's a freak out there somewhere that's like, no, I would.
I mean,
But-
I just think about these guys, they're trying to do their job. There was no indications that they were mean to him or had done anything to him that I could find. They're just trying to do their job, deliver food, and the next thing you know, they're taking a shower probably real quick.
Really quick.
So he caught additional charges for that. Then on top of that, he got some more charges because a woman came forward with some information about an incident that occurred in 2014. The woman said that she was working as an escort at that time. She had a drug habit. She was doing that to get her drugs. She arranged to meet Darren Vann for sex on February 19th, 2014. As soon as she got to their agreed upon meeting place,
He pulled a knife, man.
he did. Pulled a knife on her, put it to her throat. He tied her hands behind her back, and he raped this woman several times. So authorities added rape. They added attempted murder charges to what he was already facing. Again, he's facing murder charges. He's facing the death penalty. I'm not so sure he was worried about those additional poopy charges or the charges related to the sexual assault that he committed, early in that year.
Right.
But I don't doubt for 1 minute, Gibbs, that he did it. There's no doubt in my mind that this woman that came forward was telling the truth,
Well, sure.
knowing everything that we know. So the prosecution did seek the death penalty. Vann's attorney was fighting that. They argued that it was unconstitutional. They got shot down at a couple levels, a couple court levels.
It's just going to delay the trial, though.
And it did for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, that fight alone made it all the way to the Indiana Supreme Court. Now, they ultimately denied to take that case. But as you said, all it did was delay things for a long period of time. Another thing that delayed his trial was the fact that the prosecution wanted to try him for the 2 murders
Right.
that he was charged with
Okay.
together. Just one trial.
One trial. Yeah.
His defense attorney wanted it broken up into separate trials. So I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about the timeline, right? Arrested in 2014, committed, I think, the majority of the murders in 2014. His original trial date was sometime around the middle of 2015. But all these things, the death penalty is unconstitutional, we want separate trials.
Many delays. This thing went all the way to 2018. He's getting ready to go to trial. And as it started to get closer, the two sides started talking about a plea deal. And they worked one out. And it was that Darren Vann would plead guilty to all 7 murders, because at some point around 2016, they charged him with the other 5. Maybe they started to get mad because everything was taking so long. I don't know why they didn't charge him with all 5 in the beginning, but it's probably similar to what you and I talk about sometimes, where the case was better against the 2 and right,
they were going to get the death penalty anyway, so what did it matter?
So they'll take the best ones up they can.
But eventually, a couple years down the road, they do charge him with all 7. So he's to plead guilty to all 7, and in exchange, they would remove the death penalty. And instead of death, he would get life without parole for all 7 murders. He'd get 7 life sentences without parole. But what's interesting to me about this is they talked to all 7 families about this. They, explained the situation in detail. They talked about what could go wrong. Even if they were to get the conviction, which they most likely would have, especially given the fact that it's a death penalty case, there is always the chance, and prosecutors explain this to the family, that something could get overturned on appeal, a technicality, whatever it was. But the families weighed everything and they unanimously agreed with the plea deal. And one family member came out and said Gibbs, death was too good for him. They wanted him to wake up every day in prison and have to think about what he did to their loved one.
It's not a bad suggestion, I mean, let that person sit in his 5 by whatever cell with no enjoyments of life. He'd get his 1 hour out in the yard every day, and that's it. Let him be just miserable for the rest of his life and dwell on all the bad stuff that he did.
How many of them you think really do that?
I think maybe they go through a period of time that they might do that, but I think eventually they don't. I think I don't know how long they dwell on it, but I think
a lot of them dwell on it. My question is, I guess what we mean by the word dwell.
Well, you're right, because I think some people dwell on it. They're thinking about it and getting enjoyment out of it. Right?
They're reminiscing. Yeah. They are kind of reveling in what they've done. I don't know how many of these really horrible serial killers sit around and think, man, I wish I hadn't have done that.
Yeah.
I feel bad about that.
Sorry what I did to them and the family.
We know a lot of them don't even have the capability
to care.
To empathize or to say, I feel bad about that.
They're emotionalists, man.
But I think at that point, it had dragged on for 4 years. I think the family was ready to get it over with.
They want closure for sure.
They wanted this guy to be sentenced. They wanted him to just go away, be done.
Until then, you're reliving what happened. You can't heal yourself.
Right. Well, and on top of that, they probably didn't want the drawn out trial because it was just going to add more of that.
Sure.
Right.
Why
Details.
Go through the agony of hearing it again and again, and let's just move forward.
If you're okay with life in prison without the possibility of parole, and it means that you don't have to sit in the courtroom and listen to the details of what happened to your daughter, I can't say I wouldn't opt for that too in a certain situation.
Or this would be a good candidate for the death wish, like in the movie.
Oh, where Charles Bronson takes care of it for you?
He just does it.
Oh, I'm all for that.
Yeah. We're 100% sure he did it. Yep. Okay.
That's my problem. 10 years ago, I feel like I was more certain about the death penalty. Today, with advances in DNA, there's too many people that they're finding out didn't commit these crimes.
Yeah.
It scares the bejeebies out of me.
But when they raised their hand and said, I did it, and here's the bodies, go find them.
Well, yeah,
you know, that's that.
But so, okay, counter argument, there have been a lot of people that have said, yeah, I did it.
Yeah. But
I'm not saying they led police to the bodies.
I think that's the difference, right? Yeah. I mean, you got to be careful because people just want notoriety. Sometimes they just want to be that person. But if they can actually like lead you to locations where the bodies are, then that's pretty.
Or things that nobody but the killer would know.
Exactly.
Sure. That's it. That's the case of Darren Vann. I found it interesting on a number of levels. Number one, there was some information out there about the victims. A lot of times we don't get that.
Right.
You know, in the research can be tough in some of these cases where there's a lot of information about some of these well-known killers. Very little information about the victims. In this case, there was actually some out there about the victims. You know, they were mothers, they had children, things like that. Very little about his background, though. And you know, you and I like to dig into background. Lately, there's been some cases where it's just not there. So it's kind of hard to, for sure, say there was something in his childhood that may have caused him down the road. Maybe the guy's just evil.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around, though. You know?
I just think there are some people that are evil, right?
Definitely. We've talked about a handful of them and more.
And then the second reason was just because, you know, it was a listener suggestion and that listener had a connection with the serial killer. You and I get those a lot, but we usually get them after the episode is already aired. Not very often do we get it before so that we could actually talk to someone and hear. And the fact that this guy was a police officer and encountered Vann, I just thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, I loved it, man. I thought it was cool.
All right, we got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's check it out.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. I really enjoy your program. Your podcast is great. I'm a big fan. I've listened to most of the episodes and look forward to more. Thanks for turning me on to that television, the Netflix production, Mindhunters. The cars alone are worth watching it, but the content is good, and it does help to listen to your podcast to follow along with some of these stories from the 70s, especially. That's when I grew up, and again, good work. I can't believe I'm calling your voicemail. Bye.
But you did. You did call it.
I can't believe he's calling it either, Giz. But he's right on the money. Number one, Mindhunters is amazing. If you haven't watched it,
good stuff.
They're not paying us to say that. It's a great show.
It is good.
But
I got my guest appearance on the second episode.
Oh, the second episode of the second season. Okay,
I'm on 2.2.
You're 2.2.
Yeah.
But he touched on the cars. I never really thought about it, but I do like that. You know, when you have these series that are made today and they're set in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, 90s now, you know, they got to go out and find those cars and the way they dress, and it's all pretty cool.
Cool cars back then. I was watching Bullet the other day with my son, man.
With Steve McQueen?
Yeah. It was a great car chase, man. Those cars in there are unbelievable. Now, those were actually the cars back then.
Yeah.
But I'm just to see those cars and how badass they were.
Right, yeah. His was a Mustang, right?
Yeah.
You know what he drove?
Oh, yeah.
Like a fastback or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool move. Steve McQueen was cool.
He was a cool guy.
That coolness led him to die, but...
all the good ones do, right?
Die young.
Die young, so that's what they say.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is Megan Rosario. I'm calling in from Painesville, Ohio. It's my second voicemail I've left for you guys. I just got done listening to the Skylar Neese podcast that you guys just put out. I loved it. I've heard of the case, listened to a few podcasts about it in the past. I love the way you guys covered it. I just want to know your thoughts. If you knew that your kid had a diary or journal of something that they wrote in daily, would you sneak a peek at it every now and then? All right. Well, I'm always Team Mike and Gibby. Keep up the good work, guys, and keep your own time cooking.
So it's actually a really good question.
To the point, his daughters are upstairs and we're reading them right now.
Yeah. No. So I do try to respect my daughter's privacy, but I think as a parent, that only extends so far for me. You know, whether it's text messages or Snapchat or Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is.
Well, you're not their best friend. You're the parent always first.
Right. If I had a thought that something was wrong, and I needed to do it, I think I would do it.
Yeah. If the suspicion's heavy enough.
Yeah. I don't have that thought, and I don't know that they have diaries anyway, but I don't know. It's a tough one because you're trying to balance that line between, personal privacy, but I think that ends at a point.
And I've never read your diary.
You shouldn't. You really
try
shouldn't.
to read my journal, but I never read your diary.
You shouldn't. You couldn't anyway because it's a cipher.
It's encrypted.
You don't have the key. Yep.
Yeah, mine's open. It's just an open journal.
Nobody can make sense of it anyway.
Well, that's it. You got to be able to read and understand my jargon.
Looks like that guy from Kevin Spacey's character in Seven, or Joseph Naso's writing, maybe.
Ooh, there you go.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Cindy. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. I just wanted to let you guys know that I love your show, and I think you guys are doing a really great job, and I will suggest it to anyone that needs to know a good true crime podcast. You guys crack me up. You're awesome. I love you. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I wish you the best, and I will keep listening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, Cindy, we appreciate that.
Yeah, Cindy, thank you for that.
Good morning, Fergie and Gibby. This is Candace coming out of Atlanta. I just want to say I love you guys' podcast. It keeps me entertained all day while I'm at work. I work for a big soda company. I'm a vendor for them, and I listen to you guys while I'm pulling big old pallets of water in 2-liter sodas all day. But once again, I love the podcast. You guys just keep it going. Keep doing what you're doing. I love you guys' chemistry. I am team true crime all the time, all day. No team Gibby, no team Fergie. I love the both of you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. And once again, stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
ATL in the house.
Yep. So what soda company do you think she works for between the two big ones?
Well, be the one that's kind of headquarters in that Atlanta.
I was gonna say use your detective skills, but you're way ahead of me.
I know it.
If I had to put money on it, I would bet it was Coke.
I would think so,
but you never know.
She's in there helping them bottle them up.
Now I will say her voicemail was a lot longer. She actually had some pretty interesting things to point out about the Stephen McDaniels case, but it was so long ago that because I think she might be a little further behind.
Yeah.
Some things about the hair and other things, but it was too long, so I had to cut it. But we appreciate the voicemails, and we appreciate everyone listening and telling their friends, all that stuff.
We need you. Keep it up.
So we had mailbag.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I thought we had mailbag.
Yeah. Here we go.
I opened up some mail.
Yep.
It was from our good friend, Freya Buchanan.
Thank you, Freya.
Over in Holland.
Yeah.
And she sent a magnet.
Okay.
From Amsterdam. It's really cool. It's like the red light district.
That'd be really expensive because the shipping alone is,
cost 4 times what the magnet did. But it's like the red light district. It's
cool.
The little windows, apartments. It's really neat. But then I opened up the card and it was addressed to Morph and I.
Yeah. Oh.
On criminology.
I'm out.
So
I'll come back when you're done with this.
But I thought, I know she listens to true crime all the time. She's a big fan, and we don't really give that type. We don't say that stuff on criminology. So I just said I'd say it here.
That's cool. And it is a cool magnet.
It is very cool, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that is it, Gibbs.
That's it.
That's it for the episode on Darren Vann. Man. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So from Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
At the turn of the 20th century, rapid industrialization, urbanization, and political corruption were ravaging America. But soon, President Theodore Roosevelt and a diverse group of reformers known as progressives would fight back. Hi, I'm Lindsey Graham, the host of Wondery's podcast, American History Tellers. We take you to the events, times, and people that shaped America and Americans, our values, our struggles, and our dreams. In our latest series, we explore the Progressive Era, which came to be defined by Teddy Roosevelt and others who believed in a strong, active government that worked on behalf of all Americans rather than the privileged few. As the United States entered the 20th century, these progressives hoped to steer the nation in a bold new direction, to launch an era of reform to restore power to the people. Follow American History Tellers on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Experience all episodes ad-free and be the first to binge the newest season only on Wondery Plus. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Start your free trial today.